And inside that car were 8 prisoners, and I was one of them. We had just made a 2-day and 1-night trip from Leavenworth Federal Prison in Kansas, and we set up in the seats in the car for 2 days because there wasn't no porter to make up the beds. I don't know why. And I was shackled from my left ankle to the right ankle of another prisoner, and we were all handcuffed separately. We were fed some kind of boxed food twice a day with water, and we were guarded by 4 U.S. Marshals that the first maybe a quarter of the car was their quarters with beds and whatever bunks, and a regular toilet and everything. And they were all armed, of course. When we had to use the bathroom, they had 1 toilet inside their force, and after permission of the guard, then we could go use it, and it was kind of awkward being shackled to somebody else and having handcuffs, but we managed. Soon after we arrived, the door opened, the outside door opened, and several men come in. They were all dressed in black uniforms and black hats, and they were Alcatraz guards. So they checked the shackles and handcuffs, and then we started to get off the train. Once I got on the platform, I looked around and noticed there was quite a few uniformed policemen surrounding us, and they were all carrying shotguns. Then we all moved about a short block away to a dock, and the Alcatraz boat was waiting for us. And it was the old Warden Johnson, named after the first warden of Alcatraz. They held us on the boat, and we headed west towards the Golden Gate Bridge. And I looked out the window to my left and saw a bridge, which is the Bay Bridge. And in the center of the bridge was 2 islands. One was Treasure Island, which was built in 1939 for the World's Fair, and then the Navy used it during World War II for sailors to stay until they could catch a ship. And I was there in 1945, early 45, before I caught my first ship, which was a troop transport. And then next to that island is Yerba Buena Island, and I was there in 1948, and I got a general court-martial for going AWOL. And then, of course, we saw the skyline of San Francisco. So I didn't see Alcatraz until the boat made a wide turn as we approached it, and I saw a bunch of white buildings down by the waterfront. Looked up, and there was the prison sitting up on top of the island. After the boat docked, we got off, of course with help, and onto a little bus, and drove up the same hill you come up today, and stopped right down by the shower room where you come in, and come inside into the shower room, lined us up on the wall on the left, took the leg irons and shackles off, and then we were thoroughly searched, and then we got a shower, a hot shower. After we showered and dried off, we were given denim pants, shirts, shorts, t-shirts, navy pea coats with a watch cap, wool, all wool, shoes and socks, and then we were, mud shots were taken, and fingerprints, and then we were given a bathrobe, tooth powder, toothpaste, or powder, toothbrush, comb, you know, the things you need in yourself, bathrobe and slippers. Then the warden come in and give us a short speech about don't try to escape because nobody ever has, and if you do, you get shot, and if you get caught, then you go over to segregation for several years. And the usual speech about obey all the rules, and all the rules here at Alcatraz were really, I mean, there were rules to be obeyed. There was 53 of them. So control was the whole thing out here. So anyway, after we did that, we were taken upstairs one by one to the main cell house. And my first cell was on Broadway, which is right outside here. The third cell on the right, number 105 in the C block. And the door opened and they give me cigarettes or tobacco before I went in there. And there was a tobacco dispenser right on the end of each cell house. Pardon me. And so I went in the cell and noticed how small it was, smallest cell I was ever in. And I was in several prisons before that. And a steel bed, sink, a small toilet, 2 shelves in the back, and a writing table. Mattress was folded up with pillow sheets, pillowcase, and 2 blankets. So I set everything down, turned around, and the door slammed shut with a sound that probably nobody here has heard that sound. But no door ever closed with a cell behind me like the sound of these doors here. They just slam. So I stood there at the bars looking out, and then right across from me there was another con that was kept in for the day for some reason, looking at me, and nobody said anything because there was no hollering, loud talking, singing, whistling, or anything allowed in the cell house. A few minutes after that happened, and all the other prisoners come up that ride with me, I could hear their steps going up the stairs and coming back down. The guards left, and then the cell house just got really quiet, which is the way it usually was. So I made the bed up, put my stuff away, because I was really tired. I lay down and went to sleep. So that was my first morning here in Alcatraz. I was sent here from Leavenworth because I tried to escape from another guy, and he come out here with me. And everyone who was sent here was sent from some other federal prison for doing something wrong in that prison. So nobody was actually sentenced here. Maybe in the early days, but not later. So I was here for 5 years and 12 days, from 1954 to 1959, and I was one of the few that was released right from Alcatraz. And there was maybe 5 or 6 of us released from Alcatraz. And the reason I was released from here was that when your time was near to being up, they transferred you to a prison near your home, or where you were convicted, or if you had a hold from another state, then they transferred you near that state. And I had a parole violation hold from the state of California, and so they were coming over here to get me and take me back over to San Quentin over there. And they 3 days before I was released, my release date, the warden come over, told me that the state of California had released me to full-time served. Now, if you think that wasn't a shock when I'm looking another several years over there. And it was a shock and very confusing. And so 3 days later, they come and took me out of the cell, down to the shower, give me a slack, sport coat, one of the ugliest shirts you've ever seen in your life, a tie, new shoes and socks, and we went right out the same door, come in, on the same bus, went down, got in the boat, and I was gone. When I got over to San Francisco, and all the noise, the people scurrying around, all the color, I mean, it was very shocking. You can imagine there was no color here. Nobody run, there was nobody, why hurry? Nobody was in a hurry. And so it was a real shock. The shock lasted, I got on a jet, flew to Los Angeles, where I was met by my uncle and taken out to my brother's house. But back to the prison, I worked my first job here after 3 weeks in the cell. They assigned me here to the mess hall, which I didn't want to work in here, didn't like it, asked for a transfer, and they told me to work there or stay in your cell and lose all privileges. And privileges were yard every Saturday and Sunday in the morning and the afternoon. They showed 2 movies a week. You go to church and the yard, so and books. They had a big library here, about 9,000 or 10,000 books. So I did a lot of reading. So anyway, I asked for a transfer, and they told me to stay in the cell and lose all privileges or work. So I thought about it for about a month and stewed, and I went to my usual way out of anything I didn't like, which is violence, to mostly the people. And so one night about 4 in the morning, I broke my cell up, broke the toilet, sink, and beds, and table, and tore everything up, flooded it, and used the rule book to set fire to everything. So that's what I thought of the rule book. And so about 15 minutes later, the captain of the guard named Verdon showed up in front of the cell with 3 or 4 guards. And by then I was quieted down because I had it out of my system. And the door opened, and he says, "Come on out." So I went out, and they took me to a D block. And I was only had shorts on, so I got over there and stripped me, searched me, and put me in a dark hole. And walked in there. Oh, and the Bergen told me that you burned everything up, so you don't need any clothes, so get in. So I went in the dark hole, had a chance to look around. He said that hole in the floor is the toilet. And they plugged that. You've seen if you've been over D block. And he said that, and that was it. And they closed the sliding door, the bars, closed the outer door, and turned the light out. And it's just pitch black in there. I mean, you can't, there's no light at all. And I was in there for 29 days, stripped. And I had I had bread and water every day, a hunk of bread with water. And every third day I had a baked potato, a raw onion, and some peas. And so I was 29 days. And one day they come in, open the doors, said come out. I come out, and they give me a shower, some coveralls, slippers, and put me upstairs in segregation, which is up above there. And I was up there for 3 months. So in my next job after I got out of there, was in the glove factory. I didn't like that either, sitting there at a sewing machine, but I didn't break myself up. I just made lousy gloves. And pretty soon they realized that I probably couldn't make good gloves, so they put me in the laundry. And I worked in the laundry for about 4 years. And that was my last job. And we actually got paid working down the laundry, and 10 cents an hour, which, you know, saved up a lot of money. And there was no canteen here, so there was no reason to have any money. Couldn't spend it on anything. And also working, we got extra good time. So I think my total good time while I was here was about 5 days a month for working. So we got a lot shorter time that way. So when we would go any place in the cell house, you went in single file to where you were going, like the mess hall or out in the yard to get ready to go to work. There was no smoking or talking while you were going from one place to another. No jostling, no changes of place in line. When you went somewhere from like the mess hall to the cell, you went right to the cell. There was no standing in the gallery talking or anything else. You just went from one place to another. And that's the way that was the control. When we went to work, come down into the yard and you had yellow lines. You lined up on the line for your workplace, and then you went down the stairs to the industries. So that was, and then at noon, come back, come up, have lunch, go in the cell, have a count, come in and have lunch, back to the cell for a count, back down to the yard, back to work. So it was the same routine, day after day after day. And probably, I think in my case, the routine actually helped, because if you do the same thing every day, pretty soon it becomes a blur. And so your whole time here is kind of a blur. And so my 5 years after I come back 51 years later, that time here was really kind of a blur. And but it's all coming back since last August. So this is my 5th or 6th time back since last August. And I wanted to come back to see what it was like and heard about the anniversary, like John was saying. And so I come back, and my wife, standing right over here, we were married 37 years, and she, of course, wanted to see what this was like, because I didn't talk about it much. So I guess that's about my story.
Tell us what did you do after you got out of prison? You might want to just throw that in.
Yeah, when I got out, went my brother's house. Well, the first thing I did was lay down on his lawn and smell the grass. And the reason I did that, it sounds funny, but I was sitting out on these steps out here in the yard, up in the top, one day about 10 months before I got out, and the wind was blowing from San Francisco, which it usually does, and I smelled new mown grass. Now, if anybody's ever smelled that, it's a smell that you don't ever forget. And I asked myself the question, what am I doing here when I could be out there smelling the grass? So the answer, and I just said, why am I here? The next question. And I was here because I tried to escape from Leavenworth. Well, why was I at Neal Island? Why was I there? Well, I held up a bank down in Los Angeles. So I went all the way back to when I was 15 years old, and all the choices I made, realized all those choices were mine. Everything that happened to me. So as soon as I realized that, I had no more blame to place on anybody but myself. So that's really it's an epiphany. You know, it's an awakening. And so then I said, well, if I made the choice to do that, then I made the choice to be sitting right here in Alcatraz on this step at this time. And that's my choice. So then what am I going to do about it? Well, the choice that I made was to do my time, get out, get a job, go straight, and stay out. And I would think I would rather be a bum in a park than be in one of these rat holes, which is what they all amounted to. So anyway, after I got to my brother's, the next day, they took me down to a parole officer to check in, and then I started looking at the paper, and like maybe 3 or 4 days later, I saw an ad in the paper for a warehouseman, and I could do that because I was 32 years old, and I was 27 when I got here, so I was 32, and young, strong, and healthy. So I went down and applied for the job, and I knew, with no background, I had to be perfectly honest with the 2 brothers who owned this business. And so one of them interviewed me, and I just laid it on him, laid it to him. Perfectly honest with what I've been doing, where I've been. So he called his brother in and went through it again, and they talked it over and hired me. And just give me a chance. So that was the last person, except my family and my wife. Her family still doesn't know about me, and knew about my record. The last people knew about it. Because after that, I had a background that I could use, and you know, just people just had, you know, where you worked before, and tell them. So about 4 or 5 months after that, I saw another ad in the paper for a waiter at an Italian restaurant out in San Rafael Valley, and I went out there and talked my way into a job. Never done it before. And so the guy hired me, and it seemed like it was pretty easy for me to learn how to do that, and I get along good with people. And I found that out, that I get along good with people. And I worked there 8 or 10 months, went to another restaurant, and I learned how to make all the salad dressings, Caesar salad and that whole bit, how to carve duck and chicken and the whole thing. And so I become a Class A waiter. And in 1965, I was married early, had a son, but we didn't get along very well, and I left and come up to San Francisco, and I worked at one of the top restaurants over here for 2 years, a French restaurant, and I also worked over in Sausalito with a top French restaurant. And then my wife and I got back together, and her dad was a drapery installer, and so I wanted to get out of the restaurant business, and he taught me how to install draperies. So I did that for years, and you make a good living at it if you're fast. And then from 1980 to 1996, I fished bass tournaments all over the West Coast, and that was a professional bass fisherman. And plus I worked on the side as selling memberships in outdoor club. So then I went on, after 30 years of working, I went on Social Security like everybody else, and that's about the end of the story. Here I am, talking to all you people.
Now I got to tell you, Robert, when he came in August for the alumni gathering, he told me up front that he was kind of nervous about talking with the visitors out here, and he wasn't sure how he was going to be accepted by the public. I think you told me that you were concerned that they were going to throw tomatoes at you.
Yeah, I was raised that everything I did was wrong, and it is wrong. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, the people who were here as prisoners were the dregs of the human race, and I really believe that that's what we were. And some of us pulled ourselves out of it and become useful citizens. And I thought that anybody that knew about me, because of my background, they would shun me. So when here I come out here last August, and all of a sudden everybody wants to hear what I got to say, and I'm part of history. So I'm part of actually the myth of Alcatraz. But I take that with a grain of salt, and the only reason I'm standing here right now is because of my longevity. And I'm going to be 84 in a couple of months, and so that's why I'm here, because of longevity. And I'm just part of the myth of Alcatraz.
And you know, this gentleman here, there's not many of these guys around, last alumni gathering, we had Robert and a second convict come out to do to tell their story. There were only 1,576 numbers that were issued to prisoners on Alcatraz, and I forget your number. What's your number?
1118.
1118.
Yeah, my number is 1118, and it still is. I actually use that number. I guess it's so ingrained in me, and some of my email passwords. You know, well, I do. I use that number as a password. I mean, why not? You know, my Google Gmail has actually used that number in it, and so not very many people do that. You know that Gmail address.
But we love to say out here in Alcatraz, when we have former alumni, children of Alcatraz, or officers or convicts, that this gentleman really is living history. To have somebody, you've been listening to the audio tour, and a lot of those people that you hear on that tape are now gone. So they are getting up in age, and it's a real honor to have Robert Luke out here. So thank you for coming out, Robert.